So I'm here with Andrew Shoemaker. This is your first run for council?
It is.
And you're a shoe-in, I hear.
I don't know about that. My last name's Shoemaker.
Yeah, exactly. The elephant reader's generally active, cycling, running, climbing, yoga, hopefully, concerned about, generally healthful and healthy society and, environmentalists, but also into sustainable business, which seems to be more or less your platform.
Right.
What would you say your platform is generally, and maybe a few specifics that people could remember?
Sure. I mean, I guess one of the main reasons I'm doing this is I love community service. I mean, we were just talking before the camera started rolling about the floods, and that it's that buzz you get off of helping other people and then seeing the results of something like that and the community coming together. And
so you're talking about the recent Boulder flood, which was devastating, but also super inspiring.
It was. I mean, you see everyone from students to adults to the elderly. In a neighborhood where sometimes there's conflict between those individuals, and everybody put everything aside and came together as a community. And we in Boulder have so much more in common than we often celebrate. I think community events are huge. And so those are the kinds of things that I want to see more of in the city. And I think that community service, that's why I left an international law firm to start my own firm, was so that I could have more time to do that kind of stuff. I was the chair of the planning board for a while in the city, and then I brought the U.S. Pro Cycling Challenge here about a year ago.
Which was a huge community event, like you're talking about.
Great, and the coolest part after 2 years of work was to, when they closed down East Pearl, and you saw all the people, that morning it closed down, you realized all that work was coming to fruition, and all the people started gathering, and then they came up on Flagstaff, and one of the racers said it was the greatest day of cycling in the U.S., and that that made it all worthwhile.
Wow. So that was a fun day. Yeah, me and a whole ton of friends walked up Flagstaff and watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was so fun.
It was good. But those I'd like to do more community events. I think it was a first, for example, in Boulder in a long time, to allow people to just walk around with a beer, for example, downtown and not put them in a cage. And that sort of separates people. It doesn't allow the community to come together. And in Europe, people go to their town square and hang out, and people can be responsible, and they come together as a community and celebrate. And I think we need more of that.
So that's a good example, the USA Pro Challenge that you were instrumental in bringing here. There was a lot of tension. I think the word on the street is I think I've heard from the Pro Challenge people that it was like the hardest city for them to work with. How would you improve that or change how Boulder is? Because we're very tight about environmental concerns or whatever, which is great, but we're also hard to work with, it seems like.
Well, it's hard to work with from, there just wasn't a model for doing that. The Boulder has been here, but it's different, and it's been a long-standing thing.
Yeah.
I got involved because Governor Ritter, at the time, whose idea, came up with this idea along with Lance Armstrong, his office called me and said, we asked the city of Boulder to do this race, and they said no, or that the race would have to pay the city of Boulder to allow them to come here.
Right.
And what can you do? And again, I think it's you can get things done in Boulder. There's a lot of people with a lot of different interests and a lot of opinions, and it just takes a while, but you can get things done, and we did it. But I think going forward, there is a model now, and the Ironman, for example, is a good example. They've come in this year. And I think we'll see more community events, as I mentioned to you, just opening up beer gardens, for example, so that a family can hang out, and it's okay for a mother or father to drink a beer while their kids hanging out and not be separated into a cage.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's an ongoing tension. I grew up here in Boulder between the sort of keep Boulder weird in a good way, like there's all these odd, quirky things that Boulder is well known and loved for, and a lot of those seem to be going away.
Kinetics, things like that.
Exactly, that's kind of what I was thinking of. But also, like, affordable housing could be one of those. My mom bought, your average kind of house on 21st and Mapleton for something like $40,000. that same house is now 900,000. So maybe let's talk about affordable housing. That seems to be a big concern. I don't understand much about what to do about it.
It's a huge issue for me. And it's not just a city thing now. It takes 2.7 wage earners at minimum wage to rent a 2-bedroom in Boulder County, not the city.
Wow.
So we have this huge commute into Boulder every day, 60,000 people into Boulder every day. That's the city. Well, it's now becoming outside the county issue, all these people having to come in because they can't afford to live here. We've got to fix that. I mean, we've lost our middle income and our lower income folks. Yeah.
But what would you do to fix that?
I think the city's got to get aggressive here and explore. I mean, we have the greatest, probably one of the greatest land acquisition departments in our open space department. Why can't we use that expertise to do something on behalf of the city? And whether it would be great if we could develop our transit corridors, take some of those strip malls, for example, that aren't really Boulder. And turn those into housing, and then and develop transportation along those lines, so people will want to live there. You know, in Manhattan, which may not be the best example, but Washington D.C. or some others, people are okay living in a smaller place, even families, if they've got free transportation, if they don't need a car, and if we make that opportunity. The other option too, and one we should explore as well, is even going out into the county or elsewhere and developing a transportation system going there, so that we don't lose that opportunity for, right now we've got these people working in Boulder every day. Then we send them home at the end of the day. We've just created an environmental problem, plus all their social problems then go back to those other towns that have to bear those problems. But we got the benefit of those workers during the day, and it doesn't seem like Boulder's ethos. I mean, Boulder's got more soul than that.
Yeah, a couple years ago, Fenno.
Yep.
He ran a couple times, I think. He really impressed me in terms of his whole notion of sustainability, that as a bubble, perhaps we were more or less sustainable. Not perfect, but relatively sustainable. But then, as you were saying, so many people had to drive outside of the bubble and commute every day. So really, as an entity overall, Boulder is pushing outside anybody who isn't wealthy at this point.
Right.
Like, my good friend, I'm on the board of New Era, Steve Fenberg, through the affordable housing program, just bought probably the cheapest house in downtown Boulder. I won't say the price, but it was very affordable. On the other hand, it was incredibly expensive for, say, like my mom back in the day, a struggling single mom. Couldn't have done it. But at the same time, we have a glut of condos and all that, right? So why?
Well, what the developers are building for right now, and this is why I don't think the market necessarily solves the problem, is they're building for people that can afford a certain level, and for when I moved here in '96, for example, we wanted to actually live downtown above a shop, because we moved here from Washington D.C. and we thought that'd be cool, and we didn't have kids at the time either, and we thought, well, this would be a blast. We couldn't find anything. Then they started building that, and it was incredibly pricey. And what we need are family kinds of houses, so that townhomes or larger condominiums, and we have to either, if the developers won't build them at the right price, then I think the city has to do something more drastic. And one of the things I want to do is explore how we can get that done, because it's got to be done. And if it can't be done, there are some state issues like Tabor and other things, we need to explore whether or not it can be addressed on a statewide basis, because the ski areas have the same problem. Pitkin County, as I understand it, for example, does buy and rent and sell at a reduced rate homes, so their teachers can live in town and not spend 2 hours commuting every day, spend 2 more hours with the kids.
So you'd be on a council with, 8 other members, hypothetically?
Correct, yep.
So how do you think you could get that done?
Well, I think it depends on what the solution is. I think there've been a lot of smart people looking at this for years, and I think we need to roll up our sleeves and re-explore it. I've gone back and looked at what other campaigns have involved, and people talk about this over and over, but it's a lot of lip service, I think, and I think I'm committed to rolling up my sleeves and trying to find a solution. There's just a number of different issues, and I know the Housing Authority seems to prefer to take that money, and they can make it go further than the developer can.
But so if they can make it go further, are they building a lot of affordable housing that actually is available? So it's not such a big problem?
They're building some, but it's not enough. I mean, that's the problem. I think at the time that we passed that inclusionary zoning, there was also a proposal to fund additional affordable housing, and that didn't pass. And so, at the time, you can look at this differently, and as time evolves and as things get more expensive here, and they've gotten a lot more expensive in the past 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I think people might see the problem as more of a problem than they did, say, a decade ago. And the other issue too, it's not just people buying a place for the first time. It's one thing to say to somebody, you can't live here, you can live somewhere else. But it's another to say, for example, to an elderly person on a fixed income whose entire social network is here. You mentioned your mother, for example, or something like that.
Yeah.
You can't live here anymore.
Yeah.
That's a problem for our society, and I think we need to figure out how to address that.
Well, it's a real problem also from a business community point of view, because we have the strong tech community, the strong natural products community, but generally all my friends who are younger in waves move away after college or a couple years later. Like, we have very few young professionals here because they all, number one, they're drawn to the cities anyway, but number two, they can't, I guess, afford to live here.
If you talk to, think of, law firms pay a lot of money to their associates. They went to law school, they come in, and a lot of those associates don't even live in town because,
Wow.
and these are high paid,
Wow.
First job individuals, and
Yeah.
that's because, it's so expensive to live here.
Yeah. How are we for time? I need time from you. So what does that mean? 8 minutes left? Oh, okay, cool. So how many minutes did we have total?
20.
Okay, wow. That's good. I like it. It's Charlie Rose style.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have time. So you're, a young father with young children.
Right.
How many children do you have?
2. I have a 9-year-old son and a 13-year-old girl.
And this is pretty much a softball, but why do you, and I know Micah has talked about it, feel like that's important to have that perspective on council?
Well, there's not that perspective right now. Casey Becker's leaving council.
Right.
And so I think there are a lot of families with young school-age children in Boulder, and they need to be represented. And
right now the council's older generally?
Well, it's just whether they're older or they just don't have school-age children. It's an issue of it's just a perspective in terms of thinking about how will this affect children. And look, children are the future of our society. And a good example is the Creek Path area. I try to go down there with my family, and there's some issues down there. It's sketchy from time to time, and can we clean that up a bit? And I think a parent might think more about that than someone whose kids want to go and play in the creek and hang out down there than perhaps somebody who might just choose another choice because they don't have kids.
So that's a great specific issue. Maybe we could ask that of everybody and get a comparison. What would you do about that in terms of the surge in homeless activity down by the creek in the last, I would say, 2 years? I bike down there every day, and it's definitely, I'm knee-jerk liberal kind of guy, and it's still kind of upset me the last couple of years.
I'm the same way, and we have this thing in Boulder, which is good, which is that we think that we're not being sensitive to the homeless if we react in a certain way. If we think, well, maybe we should push some of that out. But I've talked to a very good friend works at the homeless shelter, and I've talked to Isabel McDevitt at the Bridge House and other professionals in the industry, and they have no the fact is they have rules in a homeless shelter. We need to have rules downtown on the Creek Path, and we can enforce those rules. It's actually a very small segment of the homeless population that's hanging out down there, and we could increase some enforcement issues. And at the same time, I think we need to add some funding to transitional homelessness. So what we need to do is, if we can help people who want to help themselves move on, get a job through organizations like Bridge House, and we do both of those at the same time, we are being sensitive to the issue, and we're preventing really what might be a transient homeless problem, and really helping those people who really want to stay in Boulder and move on and get a job, or if they can't because of mental health or other issues, we need to help those people.
Yeah, and what would you do about the small percentage of that homeless population that really does kind of have an attitude and you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but obviously
Yeah.
we would consult with experts, and that's the great
Yeah.
thing about being on city council is you have a staff that
Right.
that will find out what other communities have done. But what I understand, there's simple things we can do, like pass a no smoking ordinance down in the creek. If it might, if you're going to hang out down there and smoke a lot, well, that might change whether you hang out down there.
Yeah.
There are other kinds of things you can do, like just enforce rule issues if somebody's aggressive with a dog or other kinds of things. And if it becomes less a place to just hang and sort of take over the area, then you might move on and go somewhere else.
So sounds good. I've been bothered probably most of all to see young, probably Boulder High kids often hanging out, and there's this sort of I think it's safe to say there's some drug activity going on, so it's been a little bit disturbing. So Redford's having a good time down here. What other issues have I not touched on in our last couple minutes? You might want to move whatever he's about to step on there. He's fine to go nuts, I don't know. It helps, that's why I left his dog bed out. Yeah.
I think transportation, which is tied to housing, is an important issue. One of the things I'd like to do, my dog does the same, is people talk about an eco-pass and whatnot. I'm not even sure why we need an eco-pass for the downtown. You think about the 16th Street Mall in Denver. I mean, the reason you take public transportation in Manhattan is because you have no other choice. Well, in Boulder, you have other choices. So we need to reduce the barriers here.
Yeah.
If you're a mother with kids or a father with kids, the kids love to ride public transportation, by the way.
Sure.
I mean, my kids love it.
Totally.
And so if you don't even need an eco-pass at all, and like the 16th Street Mall in Denver, and we could make the hop and the skip routes where you just jump on the bus, we start getting our children used to using this bus system, and all of a sudden, we start to make a difference. And it's a regional problem, but we can start here at home, and we can think about a community-wide eco-pass. I would work towards that, but I'd really, wonder about just the idea of, to get an eco-pass, you have to go down, you have to get your picture taken, and look, we can do it, but we want people to just start trying it,
right.
even if it's a temporary program for a while. Huh. The idea of dragging your kids down and getting an eco-pass when you can only do it 2 afternoons a week, and then I forgot my eco-pass. I forget my wallet all the time because I walk around and if I just could jump on the bus.
Yeah.
And people in Denver do it all the time.
That's kind of my problem. I never take the bus. I bike every day, but I honestly don't know how it works. I don't really understand where it goes. I don't know how much it is. I don't know if I have to have exact change. I take the bus every time to DIA when I'm flying out.
Right.
But other than that, so if there was just some easy access to sort of like figure it out. I didn't even know how to put my bike on it. It's intimidating. They're in a rush.
Yeah. If you didn't have to pay, you might try it and say, well, where am I going to end up?
Completely try it.
Yeah. Where am I going to end up? Maybe it might be a fun day.
Well, I never go to like North Boulder, like a Monte area, just because of the hill. I'm just lazy.
Yeah.
And if I could hop on a bus and figure it out.
You can get there in 5-10 minutes.
I know.
Yeah.
I have friends who do it every day. And then in terms of bicycling, that's one of my pet issues. We're super proud, I think too proud in a way, of what we've done with bicycling and but the percentage of daily bike to work cyclists is still, it's amazing for the U.S. and we should be proud, but it's very low compared to, say, Amsterdam or something. What could we do to treat bikes less like a sort of stepchild of transportation and more like their own form?
Right. Well, one of the things in the Colorado legislature passed a law several years ago, Share the Road kind of law, and the city of Blackhawk, as I think you know.
Yeah, you were involved in that,
I was involved in that, yeah. Said, well, no, casino buses get the roads and bikes don't. So I brought a case on behalf of cyclists against the city of Blackhawk. We lost at the municipal court, we lost at the district court, but we took it all the way to the Colorado Supreme Court and won. And in a unanimous decision where the Colorado Supreme Court said, you know what, you've got to share the road, and this is the future. And so, and it's important to the tourism industry as well, being able to bike from one town to another. Right. And so, Blackhawk's been opened up to bicycles. And I think, we need to now take that to the next step. Boulder's got this great bike path system, which is really part of our Greenway flood system, which we saw work pretty well downtown. But if we actually had the volume of people riding that we want to ride, we'd overwhelm.
What percentage do we have now?
Boy, I think it's a 5 or 6%. I think sort of daily commuters on bikes. But if we could make our roads safer for cycling, you know, what they do in many European cities is what Bikes Belong is sort of taking to places like Chicago and Austin.
Yeah.
By the way, Bikes Belong is here in Boulder.
They're amazing.
And we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, having a separate lane for bikes that's actually separated from the cars, even sometimes with a barrier. And so we can do things like that. Make our, you know, maybe you're taking away some parking, so on-street parking. Yeah. That's okay. You know, we're encouraging people.
You're also taking away some car drivers.
That's right.
So less traffic.
That's right.
And congestion is going to be more and more of an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always say. My mom and everyone is always yelling at me to wear a helmet, which I should more. I obviously wear one when I road cycle, but I always say, and I get hit probably once a year. I always say I've never been hit in my head. The only solution is, because sharing the road on 9th Street is long term, right here. Going downtown is a prescription for death, frankly.
Right.
Everyone passes you because you're going way slower. You're going 14 miles per hour probably. Yeah. And there's not enough room to pass. So we need a lane.
I mean, you make a good point too with the helmet, and I don't want to be accused in any way of saying, you know, people shouldn't wear helmets. You should. Kids should wear helmets and whatnot. But in Europe, they don't wear helmets.
They don't.
And that makes it more easy to ride a bike, because you don't think about, I'm putting a helmet on my head, I'm getting the hat hair, I'm going to work, I'm, you know, and you feel like it's a sport when you put on a helmet. Yeah. And if you could just get people used to riding a bike like they walk, I think it would increase ridership.